TK Law Firm is a highly reputable company. Song My Rim, a member of Attorney O's team, strides confidently. She's frustrated with her colleagues who keep submitting reports that are off-topic and lack strong arguments. If they want to join Attorney O's team, they should focus. She has to stay up all night fixing their mistakes. Our protagonist is Oh Soo-yi, a brilliant lawyer with a perfect record. No case has ever gone unsolved under her watch. This time, she's tasked with helping Lee In-soo, a presidential candidate who made a hateful statement against his own people, calling them beggars. The scandal caused a major uproar. Soo-yi quickly resolves the issue, silencing the scandal and securing more votes for In-soo, who is now on the verge of becoming president. Soo-yi is a tough and uncompromising lawyer who won't hesitate to fire incompetent employees. During a trial she's presiding over, she confidently presents all the evidence, leaving no room for doubt. As always, the trial is under her control. Soo-yi has received numerous awards for her legal prowess. However, brilliant minds are often ostracized. While colleagues may smile in her presence, they secretly harbor resentment. Soo-yi's success comes at a high price. She works relentlessly, even skipping lunch with her colleagues. Currently, she's competing with Min Young-bi for the position of company representative. Due to her gender, she's not a favorite, and B seems to be more favored by the board members. But Soo-yi isn't giving up. With a few clever moves, she eliminates B from the race, leaving him frustrated and powerless. Soo-yi is chosen to represent TK Law Firm in their meeting with Hansu Group. During the meeting, she sends her people to Han Kai-teek's office to gather evidence of his embezzlement and fraud. When Han Kai-teek receives the news while still in the meeting, he's taken aback, but it's too late to do anything. Han Sung-baem, the chairman, is furious and demands the retrieval of the documents. Choi Tae-kook assures him that the documents are as good as in his hands since they are in Soo-yi's possession. He seems to be planning something. Finally, the news of Soo-yi's appointment as TK Law Firm representative is announced. My Rim is ecstatic, the fruits of her 5 years of unwavering support for Soo-yi. At a party for representatives, Soo-yi's detractors whisper behind her back, but they feign a warm welcome when she appears. After exchanging pleasantries, she retreats to a quiet corner for some respite. Yun Si-pil, representing SP, approaches her and suggests a collaboration on a case related to the documents she obtained from Hansu. He leaves his card before departing. The next day at the office, Soo-yi is bombarded with congratulations for her promotion. But amidst the congratulations, there are also envious stares. She's summoned to Tae-kook's office where he gives her a case involving Congressman On Gang-ho. The congressman is accused of rape by a young woman. Lee wants Soo-yi to silence the woman, Park So-young. Despite their political rivalry, Lee and On secretly maintain a close relationship. Tae-kook explains that the political scene is full of facades. Soo-yi accepts the case, unaware that it will change her life. My Rim, looking at the photos, curses under her breath, calling the congressman a scumbag who dares to run for president. She believes So-young is innocent. However, they are representing Congressman On. Soo-yi meets with On privately, demanding he kneel and beg for her mercy. Before leaving, she reminds him that they have never met privately, only during court proceedings. While looking at Soo-yi, So-young notices that her shoes are the same as hers, a pair that On had gifted her. During the interrogation, So-young insists that she was raped and On is the culprit. However, Soo-yi refutes all her arguments, presenting a video and threatening So-young with her family, forcing her to stay silent about the incident. So-young, filled with resentment, asks Soo-yi if forcing her family into a corner, causing them to collapse and wish for death, is Soo-yi's dream. My Rim feels sorry for the girl, but Soo-yi retorts that it's because So-young didn't choose her as her lawyer. Later that night, as Soo-yi returns home, someone falls from above, landing exactly where she was about to be. Blood splatters all over her. It's So-young. Soo-yi is shocked. It's the girl she drove to despair and death. She goes home, haunted by the incident, unable to sleep. She realizes she's created a huge mess. The next morning, reporters swarm her office for news. Soo-yi calls them scum. When she enters her meeting room, she learns that the board wants her to take a break. Su Yi warns them, "I am TK. Try to touch me, and you'll get hurt." The corrupt officials turn pale with fear. The scene shifts to a fish market where someone is celebrating passing the law school entrance exam. Gong Chan. T-Kook also meets Su Yi there. He wants her to take a break and become a law professor at Seong Law School. She's surprised by this request, as T-Kook usually never suggests such a thing. He insists it's not a suggestion, but a demand. Su Yi, staring into nothingness, asks him if So Young's death is her fault. At that moment, a young man carrying fish trips, dropping his load onto Su Yi's foot. Without a word, she stands up and slaps him. As he looks at her, he notices her bloodshot eyes filled with rage and sorrow. Su Yi then drives to the beach, crying, while the sky opens up, as if in sympathy. Memories of her happy childhood with her father flash before her eyes, followed by the grief she felt after his death. Su Yi drives to an unknown location and collapses. It turns out she has a heart arrhythmia. Thankfully, friends arrive in time to take her to the hospital. At the law school, Gong Chan excitedly runs to his classroom, finally having passed the exam. However, the classroom seats are arranged in order of exam scores. He waits for his professor, but instead, Su Yi walks in, her face emotionless. She introduces herself and states, "A lawyer should never let their client go to jail." The students are stunned. Gong Chan recognizes her from his time in prison. He sees her radiant smile and is shocked. Finally, I've found her again, he thinks. Luckily, she doesn't recognize him. Su Yi goes to visit her old professor, who's aged considerably. She learned through him that the professor helped her get appointed as director of the center. She needed this role to regain public trust, though it's not a glamorous position, mostly filled with administrative tasks. After Su Yi leaves, the professor looks at a painting with hazy smoke and contemplates. Chan returns home, the rain bringing back memories of a few years ago. He was young then, and worried about his missing sister. He searched for her in the dark of night, drenched in rain, and found her unconscious at an abandoned construction site. He called for help, but someone knocked him unconscious. His friends are aware of this painful memory, and avoid talking about it when they meet him. Su Yi is investigating the Hansu biotransfer with her trusted people. She wants them to find evidence of Han Kai-teek and T-Kook's hidden activities, even things they don't know about, things beyond their wildest imagination. At TK Law Firm, Su Yi is stopped by security. She's on leave, but apparently, she doesn't even know she's on leave. Choi Ju-won and T-Kook appear. It turns out someone has already taken over her position. T-Kook eventually relents and orders the door to be opened for her. Su Yi is furious at T-Kook's actions. She receives a call from a student who says the class will be cancelled if she doesn't come. But this is Su Yi. She doesn't allow things to be cancelled so easily. The top student in the law course will get a job at TK Law Firm, and Su Yi will even pay 20 million won for their tuition each year. Students flock to the class, but Su Yi doesn't teach. She gives them a stack of books and tells them to study. She'll visit once in a while. The assistant instructor informs them that their professor is Su Yi. Coincidentally, Gong Chan's group is assigned to Su Yi. Congressman Lee In-soo and Chairman Han Sung-baem receive an anonymous letter. It's the financial report of Hansu Bio. The two men are surprised. Chairman T-Kook learns about it and visits Su Yi's office, demanding that My Rim open the letter. But it only contains drawings. My Rim calls Su Yi and is nearly scared out of her wits. The scene shifts to a lecture hall where Choi T-Kook is giving a presentation to the students. Su Yi meets with him. He's confused about her actions, wondering why she would provoke the two men in that way. She explains that they had promised her good things, and T-Kook wanted to transfer the company to his son. He couldn't let her handle the transfer, and she's very bold to dare to oppose his son. Su Yi encounters Professor Seo. He's a pervert who makes advances on her. Despite her warnings, he doesn't stop. Just then, Gong Chan appears and pushes Seo away. He's angry and asks who Gong Chan is. Su Yi doesn't want to make a fuss, but Gong Chan grabs him and demands an apology. He ends up getting slapped. This slap reminds Su Yi of the one she gave him earlier. She apologizes to Gong Chan for her past behavior. explaining that she was going through a tough time. He understands. Before leaving, she warns him to stay out of her affairs, whatever they may be. A scandal erupts at the school. Na-si Ryan, a student, accuses Professor Seo of sexual assault. However, due to the professor's influential position, other professors dismiss it as a misunderstanding. With nowhere else to turn, Si Ryan seeks help from Su-yi, but she rejects her, saying, "Haven't you been violated once already? Still haven't learned your lesson?" The law in South Korea doesn't favor women's protection. Chan, witnessing this, also asks Su-yi to help Si Ryan, but she misunderstands him. She thinks he has feelings for the girl and advises him to find solid evidence to protect her. If he can find that, she might consider helping them. Su-yi is later aided by Professor Seo's family to cover up the scandal. Chan and his friends quickly find evidence to incriminate the perverted professor. During a trial held at the school, they present the evidence, but the professor and his wife, both experienced figures, manage to have their evidence dismissed. Su-yi can't stand to watch anymore. She projects an image of Professor Seo making advances on her, a legal piece of evidence. Professor Seo is slapped by his wife. Later, as Su-yi and Gong Chan meet in an elevator, he confesses that he did all this for her. He claims it's because he likes her, and, without realizing, takes her hand. As the elevator opens, he nervously lets go and leaves. Su-yi keeps thinking about the touch, her lips curving into a smile. After the incident, Chan's group is invited to dinner by the dean. My-rim is there as a guest. But back at the school, a troubling situation unfolds. A girl named Jae-young accuses Su-yi of causing her sister's death. Su-yi asks for her name and learns she's So-young's younger sister, the girl who jumped from the building. Jae-young accuses Su-yi of murder. Su-yi vehemently denies the accusations, stating that she didn't kill So-young. She blames So-young's family, who put immense pressure on her, leading to her suicide. Su-yi advises Jae-young to stop these pointless actions, but she insists otherwise, threatening to reveal evidence of Su-yi's involvement in her sister's death. A few hours later, a video accusing Su-yi is widely circulated. Su-yi remains calm, unafraid. Professor Yoon uses this opportunity to push for Su-yi's dismissal as director of the Legal Counseling Center. Returning home late at night, Su-yi remembers a strange incident in the elevator that evening. She remembers noticing So-young's shoe accessory had fallen, so she returned to the elevator and went up. Just as she expected, So-young was alone at the top. Su-yi approaches her, asking who called her up there and if she's planning to jump. So-young, overwhelmed with despair, steps closer to the railing and shouts. This is the source of the video accusing Su-yi. The scandal hits the school, and things get worse at home. Su-yi's greedy mother and two brothers hear about the trouble she's in. They assume she's unable to make money for them and leave. Gong Chan remains concerned for his professor. The next day at school, Su-yi, in her bold way, brings her case to class. The students are surprised. She asks questions, and they answer, consistently blaming her. Chan, however, doesn't agree. He proves her innocence, believing she wouldn't do such a thing. Everyone is surprised, including Su-yi. As Su-yi leaves, it's raining. She doesn't have an umbrella. Just as she's about to walk in the rain, Gong Chan appears with an umbrella. He pulls her hand, puts it on the umbrella, and runs with her in the rain. She smiles happily at him. He smiles back as he watches her go. Driving home, Su-yi sees Gong Chan running in the rain. She's so focused on him that she forgets about the umbrella. It flies open, and she's startled. She nearly has an accident. Later, Gong Chan invites her to eat. They are enjoying the meal when Choi Tae-koo calls and ruins the mood. He needs her help with his son, who has been involved in a drug abuse scandal. My-rim is angry, knowing that these old men always make the lawyers clean up their messes. But since the So-young incident, Su-yi has resolved to stop forcing herself to do things she doesn't want to. She initially refuses, but ultimately agrees, all for the sake of TK Law Firm. Tae-kook believes she still views TK Law Firm as her own and says, "This is TK Law Firm, not yours." She doesn't bother arguing and leaves. At school, Su-yi assigns Gong Chan's group the task of investigating the So-young case. She doesn't care about their motives, she just wants results. Everyone is puzzled, but Gong Chan knows her true intention is to find the person who killed So-young. With youthful enthusiasm, they spring into action, even sneaking into TK law firm to check the security footage. The case of the wealthy playboy is finally resolved. After beating up his son, T-Kook sits down with him to talk. He demands that Ju-won recover the Hansu files as soon as possible. They're still in Su-yi's possession. He needs them to free himself from the control of the board members. Once he has those files, he will have Su-yi back under his control, and she will bear all the responsibility. Su-yi finds a USB drive amongst the documents she retrieved from Hansu. It seems to be heavily encrypted. She meets with Gong Chan and his group at TK law firm. The young people are amazed by the building's modern design. Gong Chan is late, but overhears his colleagues in the elevator talking about Su-yi. Su-yi gathers her team on the rooftop to discuss So-young's death. They have a new lead. So-young's younger sister was also on the rooftop when her sister died. CCTV footage shows Jae-young meeting So-young before the suicide, but this theory is quickly dismissed. Jae-young loved her sister dearly, and she wouldn't do such a thing. As they leave, Su-yi notices Roman Tu-koo talking on the phone nearby. She wonders if he's involved somehow. Amidst the chaos at TK, Gong Chan is drawn to Su-yi's calmness. He enters her office, they chat for a while, and he asks if she had planned to meet So-young or if it was a chance encounter. Just then Ju-won walks in, demanding the Hansu files. Su-yi refuses. Trouble strikes again. At the hospital, Jae-young is arrested for suspected involvement in her sister's death. Gong Chan's team believes Su-yi is behind this, using the evidence to protect herself. Gong Chan approaches her, demanding answers, which makes Su-yi uncomfortable. He assures her that he trusts her and that he's telling the truth. He even confesses his love for her, even if she doesn't love him back. He accepts that he loves her unconditionally. He then leaves. Su-yi is surprised and flustered, so much so that she drops her cup of water. Gong Chan hears the noise and rushes in. He picks her up and sits her on the table, clearing the broken glass. As she looks at him, memories of their intimate moments flash through her mind. Suddenly, she jumps down, asking him, "What are you?" She then kisses him, tears rolling down her cheeks. Gong Chan's team is still discussing whether Su-yi is the one who reported Jae-young, leading to her arrest. Chan is lost in thought about the kiss. Su-yi is also confused about her actions. Later, she seeks advice from the dean. He advises her to stop trying to find the perpetrator and instead focus on understanding why So-young went up to the rooftop. Su-yi picks up My Rim and shows her the documents she has found. The top floor of the building where So-young worked was a playground for the wealthy elites, and Choi Tae-kook was involved. The shocking news is that So-young was pregnant, yet she still committed suicide. The USB drive Su-yi recovered has been unlocked, but the contents are protected by multiple layers of encryption, hinting at a serious secret. Jae-young wants Su-yi to let her go. Despite the evidence against her, Jae-young denies everything, still believing that Su-yi is responsible for her sister's death. The two communicate through notes, frustrating the police, who fail to get any information from them. C-Pill provides Su-yi with some valuable photos related to Sung-beom and So-young. She calls Gong Chan's team to discuss Jae-young's case. They can't take it anymore and directly ask if Su-yi is the one who provided the evidence that led to Jae-young's arrest. She coldly confirms it. If they want to know her intentions, they need to investigate. They question if she believes in Jae-young, and she reminds them that the lawyer doesn't need to believe the client needs to believe the lawyer. Su-yi goes to a bar with her friend, feeling troubled. Gong Chan happens to be at the same bar. She awkwardly covers her face. He drinks and tells the bartender about the woman he loves, a brilliant and powerful woman. Su-yi smiles, but she seems to have someone else, a rich guy with assets worth 7,000 billion won. He confesses his feelings, but it seems he's not getting anywhere. Su-yi finds his story amusing. Tae-kook calls Su-yi to his office. He needs her to handle some cases involving wealthy businessmen. including his son's divorce. This time, she directly refuses, surprising him. She doesn't want to be involved, especially with Ju Wan's child. She threatens him, saying he should try to save his marriage. Gong Chan's team works quickly and efficiently. They find a video from an anonymous YouTuber. Su Yi takes it to the police. The footage shows that the person pushing So Young off the rooftop was not Jai Young, but someone else. Jai Young is released. She thanks Su Yi, who pays her mother's hospital bills and advises her to keep a different diary to avoid attracting police attention. Gong Chan calls to apologize for his actions. He reminds her that he trusts her, so why is he apologizing? Su Yi blurts out that she doesn't have a boyfriend with 7,000 billion won in assets. She realizes what she said and is confused. Gong Chan, after hearing her, realizes she was the woman at the bar. He regrets not recognizing her sooner. He spills out his feelings, hoping she hears him. Su Yi returns home and finds her lock broken. Someone has broken in. Her apartment is close to Gong Chan's, so she calls him. As she opens the door, a man in black attacks her. She tries to resist, but he overpowers her and throws her against the glass, shattering it. The attacker knocks Su Yi unconscious and steals the USB drive. He runs downstairs, but runs into Gong Chan. They struggle, but the attacker escapes. Gong Chan runs upstairs and can't find Su Yi. He sees blood on the stairs and races to the rooftop. Su Yi is injured. They hide and observe the attacker. Then Gong Chan takes her to the hospital. The police arrive to take a statement, but Su Yi refuses, saying it's not important and she can let it go. Gong Chan is confused about her decision and asks why she's doing this. She tells him not to interfere in her affairs. Worried about her, he takes her back to his apartment to rest. He ends up falling asleep next to her and wakes up in the morning. Su Yi then goes to see Han Kai-teek, who she suspects took the USB drive. She discovers something else. Hong Suk Pal is also connected to the case. Meanwhile, Tae-kook, in his car, worries about how to get the USB drive back. He doesn't know it's in Gong Chan's hands. At school, Su Yi uses her case as a teaching tool. Gong Chan realizes she's trying to find the lost USB drive. He and Yoon Sang are talking when Su Yi discovers them and kicks them out. He tells Yoon Sang that he knows his true identity as the chairman's son. Gong Chan's team manages to unlock the USB drive. They find a file with billions of won and a video revealing the person who attacked Professor Seo. Yoon Sang sees the person in the video and is furious. It's his brother. Su Yi also gets the video from Han Kai-teek's car. As she suspected, he's the culprit. The shoes in the video are identical to the ones she saw in his room. Ju Wan confronts his father, accusing him of having Ju Wan commit the crime. He calls his father a worthless bastard. Su Yi knows the truth. Everything is about to end. Gong Chan arrives to give Su Yi the video of the perpetrator and the USB drive. His team also saved a backup of the files. Su Yi doesn't thank him, but instead accuses him of overstepping his bounds. She reminded him to stay out of her business. Chan is just worried about her. That evening, after getting her bandage changed, Su Yi talks to her friend. The next day, she's invited to a dinner by the chairman. But it's Han Kai-teek who shows up. Chairman Choi asked him to retrieve the USB drive. Su Yi doesn't hesitate to mention his break-in to steal the drive. He, in turn, brings up a painful memory from 7 years ago. She was tricked by Chairman Choi and sent to America. He promised to send Ju Wan with her, and they would have a family and children. But Ju Wan never came, and she miscarried. When she called him, she learned that he had married someone else. Her life was shattered. She's devastated. Su Yi remains calm and walks towards Kai-teek, pouring him a drink. "Can you really play with me?" she asks. The appetizer is done, time for the main course. She wants to see Chairman Choi. She recalls asking him why he did this. He simply saw her as a pawn and told her to return to work for him. He shook her hand and promised her a position and wealth, but she wanted more than that. She wanted to rise above him and swallow him whole. She then reveals the shell companies he uses to launder money in the Bahamas, all registered under Oh Su Yi's name. She demands 70 billion won for her name. Choi Tae-kook is shocked. He's furious. You want 70 billion won for a USB drive the size of your finger, he scolds her, asking if she's been trained like a loyal dog, only knowing how to wag her tail. Su-yi replies that if that were the case, he would have discarded her long ago. He agrees to the deal, but asks how he can be sure she won't leak the information. She assures him that as long as he's sure, she will keep it a secret. Tae-kook is furious. He meets with Kai-teek and punches him, saying that he'll lose 27 billion if he doesn't do as he's told. Chairman Choi also learns about Gong Chan, the one who found the USB drive, but dismisses him as unimportant, unaware of Gong Chan's persistent investigation into his sister's case. After catching the criminal, Gong Chan changes his name and continues to investigate. He believes the man isn't guilty. His brother tries to stop him, telling him to focus on his love, saying he's suffered enough over her. Su-yi goes out to drink with her friend. She's drunk and tells Jun-hee about her 70 billion won deal and the meaning of her name. Su-yi, bright and beautiful, a name her father gave her. But now it's associated with dirty things like shell companies. She passes out on the table. Gong Chan arrives at the bar, invited by the owner to eat grilled fish. He sees Su-yi and, in front of Jun-hee, says he doesn't want to see her. Chan also says the same. Jun-hee teases Su-yi, making her blush. She leaves early, giving them privacy. Chan wonders why Su-yi doesn't want to see him. She asks if he's ever had his name dragged through the mud. He has, ever since he was released from prison. People avoided him and saw his name as a curse. That's why he changed his name to Gong Chan and began investigating his sister's case. The next day, Su-yi meets with C-Pill. They discuss the Hansu Bio transfer while having breakfast. At TK law firm, Su-yi confronts Suk-pal. Before leaving, she blocks the elevator doors and asks what he wants. She wants So-young's phone. He took it because he was afraid of something. She gives him her business card, telling him to call her if he needs help. He crushes the card in his hand and laughs like a madman. Su-yi then asks My-rim, who's close with the chairman's assistant, to keep an eye on things. Su-yi continues to investigate So-young's case with Gong Chan's team. She presents a contract. Anyone who helps her will get a condition fulfilled. They can ask her to help them with a case or a personal favor. There's a young man who wants her help with his presidential campaign. Ju-won is different. He asks her not to fall in love with Chan. He saw them drinking together and thinks she's cold-hearted. But after that day, he realizes she can laugh. Gong Chan signs the contract without any conditions. He's willing to work for free. Finally, Su-yi gets her 70 billion won deal. Ju-won is called back to Korea. Tae-kook tells him that Su-yi knows about the shell companies in the Bahamas. He wants Ju-won to divorce his wife and marry Su-yi. Having her outside is dangerous, but having her inside would be like a tiger with wings. Su-yi meets Ju-won's wife. She learns that Yi is not her biological daughter. Tae-kook lied. After talking to her, Su-yi realizes how similar their situations are, both filled with painful pasts. She speeds down the road, crying, remembering her past. Standing on a bridge, she thinks about her daughter's name, Hanul, a beautiful name. She has tried to forget it for years, but she can't. She needs to erase that name from her life and move on. She can't let anyone know about it ever again. On the other side, Gong Chan sees a woman eating bread and realizes she's his adoptive mother. He follows her home and secretly leaves some food for her. Su-yi calls Jun-hee for advice. She wants to tell someone good about everything she's been through and hopes they'll keep it a secret. Then, she drives to Gong Chan's house. As she's about to go inside, she receives a call from Suk-pal. He wants to meet her to talk about So-young's death. Su-yi drives to his location. She doesn't see him, but she hears a phone ringing nearby. She sees a car and notices Suk-pal unconscious inside. As she approaches the car, it explodes. Su-yi is shocked. Gong Chan calls her. She's terrified and tells him that she was about to meet him and tell him something. He asks where she is and rushes to her, but the explosion makes him even more worried. Su-yi faints after the explosion. She wakes up and calls the police to report a car explosion at the fishing spot. There may be injuries or fatalities. She's exhausted but forces herself to drive away. Gong Chan catches up to her and insists on driving. Seeing that she's about to faint, he takes her home. Gong Chan's team starts investigating the name Suk Pao, the one who broke into Su Yi's apartment. They gather information and discuss various theories. At Su Yi's house, it's late, and she asks Gong Chan to go home. He's worried about her, so he pretends the sofa is big enough and wants to sleep there. She knows he's worried, but doesn't think it's necessary. She assures him she's fine, but he lies down and hugs a pillow, pretending to sleep. She doesn't say anything. Later that night, he gently covers her with a blanket and sits next to her. Su Yi has a nightmare. She's trapped in a burning car. Smoke fills the car, and it explodes. She wakes up in a panic and runs to the bathroom to cry. Gong Chan knows he shouldn't say anything, so he just sits beside her, offering comfort. The next day at school, Yoon Sang finds Gong Chan and scolds him for staying with Su Yi all night. He urges him to delete the information on the USB drive, not to implicate his brother and father. But Gong Chan is determined to investigate. Their conversation is overheard. Everyone learns that Yoon Sang is Chairman Choi's son. Su Yi was at the scene of the explosion, and she senses danger. She goes to meet Si-pil and tells him about it. Chairman Choi invites her to dinner. He knows about her situation and suggests she work for him to be safe. He's the only one who can protect her. If she agrees, she should come to the Future Forum anniversary event tomorrow. He'll arrange a spot for her. Su Yi coldly replies, "I won't take the bait." That night, Gong Chan brings food to her apartment, along with a note. She reads it and smiles. She knows Chairman Choi won't let this go, but she doesn't realize how quickly he'll act. The next day at school, the police arrive to arrest Su Yi. They view her as a suspect in Suk Pao's attempt to harm So Young. They even have a warrant for her arrest. Gong Chan's team is worried about her. They try to intimidate the officers, demanding they release her. It's unacceptable to arrest a professor at the university, especially with handcuffs. Gong Chan arrives and gently puts his scarf around her hand. News of Su Yi's arrest spreads through the news channels. My Rim and Gong Chan go to her house to find any documents she might have hidden. Chairman Choi is quick to act. He sends Ju Won to retrieve Su Yi's hidden files. He's also there. The scene shifts to an interrogation room. The police show Su Yi a video, claiming it's Suk Pao's last will and testament. He accuses her of forcing him to do this and says she threatened his family. Su Yi is arrested and taken to jail. Who can save this great lawyer? Back to the interrogation scene, My Rim is shocked after watching the video. She can't believe that Su Yi would do such a thing. They deliberately drop things to make Su Yi talk to My Rim. The last sentence in the audio recording isn't Su Yi's voice. It's been tampered with. My Rim tells Gong Chan's team about this. Su Yi only told My Rim because she doesn't trust anyone right now, not even the police or the prosecutors. News about Su Yi's case is spreading rapidly. My Rim and Gong Chan's team need to investigate quickly before the accusations against Su Yi become reality. Her life will be a living hell if they don't. Gong Chan knows this firsthand and feels for her. Chairman Choi seizes this opportunity and takes the USB drive containing important information. My Rim visits Su Yi in jail and informs her about the missing USB drive. She promises that she and the team will do everything to get her out. They start their investigation by following the burnt-out car belonging to Suk Pao, but they lose his trail. They frantically search for him, but the car has been crushed. Those bastards are too efficient, they lament. Gong Chan also asks someone to analyze the audio recording. It's been edited. Everyone else looks for garages that specialize in car bomb installations, but they hit a dead end. In jail, Su Yi continues to think about everything that has happened, connecting the pieces. Back at the bar, everyone is stuck until they have a new discovery. Suk Pao's fingers were very peculiar. It was a signal for an auction at the fish market. He was trying to point to Ha-ramen Tuku. Connecting the dots, Su Yi suspects Chief Ha. He never acts alone. Everything goes through Chairman Choi. Things are becoming clear. The scene shifts to Chief Ha returning home. He discovers his drawer is empty. Su Yi meets her old friend in jail. They chat for a bit, and she confidently says that she will be released today. Today is the day of Soo-yi's trial. The judge is, surprisingly, the wife of Professor Kim, who was once targeted by Soo-yi. The trial begins. Mi-rim arrives just in time. She and the prosecutor engage in a heated debate. She tries to present evidence proving the audio recording is fake, but it's not on the court record and is rejected. Thankfully, the officer who arrested Soo-yi, who still has a conscience, stands up and tells the truth. The evidence is admitted. The audio recording is confirmed to be a fake. Mi-rim also presents evidence that Suk Pal planted the bomb in his car. Things are going well for Soo-yi. Then the trial is interrupted by news that Han Kai-teik has surrendered. He admits that he incited Suk Pal to harm So-young. Flashback to the moment when Gong Chan's team discovers Chief Ha's involvement. They devise a plan for Yoon Sang to drink with him and steal his access card. They sneak into his office and retrieve the original audio file for analysis. Meanwhile, Chairman Choi tells Han Kai-teik to surrender. This way, he can still save him. He even offers to increase the Hansu transfer from 27 billion to 40 billion. This is why everything happened during the trial. The trial is over. Soo-yi's innocence is confirmed. Mi-rim and Soo-yi breathe a sigh of relief. The judge smiles at her. Gong Chan's team is also happy. They won this battle. Soo-yi returns home to find Gong Chan waiting for her. He tells her to come live at his place. It's not safe. She leans against him and says she's hungry. He gently embraces her. The two of them got in the car to go home and stopped by a birthday cake shop to buy some cake. When they got home, the female lead was greeted by a clean and tidy house, fully equipped with essential supplies. Soo-yi called her friend to ask if she could stay over, but Jun-hee refused and hung up the phone. Song Mi-rim arrived at this time, carrying Lawyer Oh's belongings. Since the house renovations were taking longer than expected, Soo-yi decided to stay here. Everyone started to join in the birthday party together, having fun eating, drinking, and dancing like crazy. Meanwhile, Choi Tae-guk, along with other CEOs and directors, were having drinks and chatting. After they got quite drunk, Congressman Lee arrived, and there was a minor conflict. The female lead, who had just moved in, fell ill. Everyone took good care of her. In the middle of the night, Soo-yi woke up and saw messages from Chairman Han and Congressman Lee, both proactively contacting her. Both of them offered her positions with special benefits if she joined their side and worked for them. She went downstairs and saw the male lead still cleaning. Then he cooked a pot of hot pot for Soo-yi to nourish herself. She spent some happy days living here with the guys, going to work in the morning and playing games with them at night. However, one day, Hee-young, on her way home from work, saw the female lead staying at her student apartment. The next day, she called everyone for a meeting, wanting to humiliate Soo-yi. But Soo-yi, a righteous woman, admitted the truth, saying, "I am not afraid of death." Hee-young wanted to find a reason to kick Lawyer Oh out, but couldn't come up with anything else. At this time, she saw the phones of the two CEOs and the congressman, so she proactively met with both of them. Lawyer Oh promised to introduce them to another person to work directly with, and she would be behind the scenes to support him. If the tiger had a mishap, the fox would step in. Oh Soo-yi also agreed to be responsible for the Hansu group until the transfer and all subsequent matters, so the three of them reached an agreement as they desired. Upon returning to her office, the female lead called lawyer Min Young-bi and appointed him as the director of the legal department of Hansu Group. Then she told him that she would introduce his wife Hee-young as the spokesperson for the presidential election campaign that Congressman Lee was running for. Hearing this, Young-bi was very happy and deeply moved, regretting that he and his wife had thought badly of Lawyer Oh. Choi Tae-guk called the female lead to have lunch. When they were seated at the restaurant, he bluntly told her that he knew she was collaborating with Chairman Han and Congressman Lee. Then Chairman Choi asked her about the USB copy of the Hansu Group and the things she got from Director Ha's desk drawer. The female lead admitted that she was holding all of those things, including videos of the three of them partying. Soo-yi said that the path seemed smoother now, possibly implying Choi Tae-guk. Chairman Choi saw that Lawyer Oh was essential to his plan, so he had to keep her. The female lead didn't beat around the bush and confirmed that the chairman was also someone she needed, which is why she decided to come back. Choi Tae-guk was happy that they were both honest with each other. His son arrived and asked to intern at Lawyer Oh's place, which surprised her. After the two left, Chairman Choi pondered how to avoid ruining the plan he had been meticulously arranging. Gong Chan was working when he received news that Lawyer Oh was sitting with a wealthy CEO. He rushed back home, telling the female lead to drink less before going up to her room. After drinking, she received a call from the police station about her mother driving while intoxicated. She wanted to go there immediately, but suddenly remembered that she had been drinking beer too, so the male lead drove Su-yi. When they got there and completed the procedures to bail her mother out, it was almost 6 a.m. Seeing that she was a bit tired, Gong Chan took Su-yi to the beach to watch the sunrise. He had prepared some food from home beforehand, so they wouldn't be hungry. This feeling was truly new for the female lead, making her happy. The male lead found Lawyer Oh very adorable, so he kissed her. Before she could react, Gong Chan kissed her again. He confessed his feelings and proposed to the female lead, then hugged her. Then, they sat together, watching the sunrise and sharing their dreams. They talked until they were tired and then returned to feed each other dog food. After watching the sunrise, the two returned to work. At the legal consulting center, 3 women came in seeking advice because they had been scammed, each losing 700,000 won. All 3 were low-income workers, one of them was visually impaired and couldn't see clearly. 700,000 won was a significant amount of money for them. As they were recounting the scam, Gong Chan returned to the office. He was wondering about something when everyone reminded him that there were clients, so he greeted them politely and said they should continue to explain so they could understand the situation and offer help. However, the visually impaired woman, upon hearing his voice, blurted out the name Kim Dong-gu. Hearing this name, the male lead was stunned. He realized that the woman was his stepmother. Those present explained that Gong Chan wasn't Kim Dong-gu, but the woman persisted, repeating the name and grabbing his collar. The male lead froze, not knowing what to do. An older woman suggested he leave temporarily so she could calm down. Outside, Gong Chan sat down on a chair, bewildered, remembering the name the woman had uttered. He cried upon seeing his stepmother's poor eyesight. Su-yi arrived just then and saw her boyfriend looking downcast. She was about to approach him when Min Young-bi called. He urgently reported a serious landslide incident at the construction site in Yongpyong, which could affect the transfer process, and requested her presence there immediately. Gong Chan saw the female lead and went to her. He wanted to talk to her, but Su-yi was preoccupied and wanted to leave. Gong Chan grabbed her hand and begged for just a few minutes. At that moment, Lawyer Song My Rim called, so Lawyer Oh made an appointment to talk later at home and left. On her way to the scene, Su-yi heard a report on the urgency of the landslide situation. Upon arriving, she discovered the situation was more severe than she imagined. 2 victims were trapped under a container, and they only had 72 hours to save them. Hearing this, the female lead ordered all possible methods to be employed for rescue. After the 2 victims were found under the container, the rescue team discovered a bound skeleton right next to them, seemingly an old case. The news quickly made headlines. Gong Chan was discussing the scam case with everyone when he saw this news. He quickly stood up and left the room. He looked at the picture taken at the construction site and noticed a bracelet identical to the one he had been given, which was stored in the warehouse. It turned out this bracelet was a birthday gift from his younger sister to everyone in the family. Remembering this, the male lead rushed back to the warehouse to find the bracelet. Oh Su-yi returned home with Song My Rim to find some documents when they were called out for dinner. Knowing that Gong Chan was on the roof, she went up to call him down to eat together. But when Su-yi arrived, no one was there. She noticed the warehouse door was open and went in, calling for her boyfriend. But she was met with a board detailing an old case, which surprised Lawyer Oh. There were pictures of Chairman Choi, and notably, a picture of her from her younger days. Back then, the female lead was the lawyer defending the case. She was shocked and hurried away, but after taking a few steps, she stepped on something. Picking it up, she discovered it was an ID card. It had Gong Chan's name, but the picture was of someone else. She knew that person. His name was Kim Dong-gu. Su-yi was astonished to learn Gong Chan's true identity was Kim Dong-gu. The female lead was shocked by the truth and left, refusing to eat anything. She stopped her car and reviewed the file of the visually impaired woman who had visited the center earlier. She realized that she had met her at the Kim Dong-gu trial. She was the male lead's stepmother. Lawyer Oh recalled the moments before, especially Gong Chan asking for a few minutes to talk. Meanwhile, Gong Chan visited his unfortunate younger sister. He was surprised to meet the hospital director there. The director had come to visit and thank the young girl because his daughter had been in an accident 10 years ago and had been helped by Na Young. He had been visiting occasionally since learning of Na Young's passing. After explaining himself, the director left. Gong Chan received a call from his brother saying that the female lead probably went to the warehouse and learned his true identity. Hearing this, he was quite tired and sighed. He also sought his father, hoping he would testify about the matter, but his father refused. Feeling dejected, Gong Chan sat there and drank heavily. The female lead was also overthinking things and went to see her close friend Jun Hee for comfort and had some drinks. Returning home in a torrential downpour, Gong Chan didn't immediately go up to his room, but sat alone in the rain. He was heartbroken about everything that had happened. The female lead arrived with an umbrella and went to him. He was about to explain everything to his girlfriend, but Lawyer Oh stopped him from speaking. Gong Chan realized that Su Yi knew about his identity. She handed him the umbrella and left without even looking at him. The next day, the three women from before received their money back and came to the center to express their gratitude. The visually impaired woman also came to apologize to Gong Chan. He heard her apology, but it pained him. Then Gong Chan told her that he had found Na Young and wanted her to go with him to the police station. She didn't believe him. However, he confessed, "I am Kim Dong-gu." His stepmother still couldn't believe her daughter was gone and stumbled, falling down. Everyone rushed to help the stepmother, confused about what had just happened. Everything had been fine until the conversation with Gong Chan, and now it was filled with sadness. Seeing this was not a good sign, the male lead went to his stepmother's house and searched for something to compare with the DNA of the corpse. Luckily, he found a strand of her hair. Without hesitation, he flew to the police station to request a comparison of the hair with the remains. However, because the male lead couldn't provide a convincing reason, the police refused and even threw away the hair. Gong Chan became furious, grabbing the policeman's collar. He shouted, "That's my sister, you." He created a scene in the station, but the officers managed to calm him down. Lawyer Song My Rim and Choi Yoon Sang witnessed the incident. There was nothing more to say, so he left. The male lead returned home and sat alone in the warehouse. After hearing Song My Rim's account of the incident at the police station, the female lead called her boyfriend and asked him to meet. He felt a glimmer of hope and immediately went to the meeting place. However, as he neared the location, he received a call from the female lead, telling him to stop. She didn't want him to come closer and said they would talk over the phone. The male lead confessed everything to her. He felt guilty and regretted it, but he didn't intentionally deceive her. Lawyer O said, "If you changed your name to continue living, you should break free from that haunting." But the male lead was still stuck in that mess. "If I had known that Gong Chan was Kim Dong-gu, I wouldn't have liked you," she said. He was surprised and didn't know what to say. He asked Su Yi, "Can Gong Chan love you, but Kim Dong-gu can't?" He explained that he didn't want to reveal the truth and had waited as long as he could. He hoped she wouldn't know about it forever. Su Yi listened, but concluded with a statement. "Let's stop here. Keep your distance." Although they were close, just a few steps apart, it felt like they were worlds away. Back home, the male lead sat dazedly on the roof, lost in thought, while Lawyer O sat reminiscing about the old case. It was her first case, and she had gone to many places to gather more evidence to prove Kim Dong-gu's innocence. When she met the hospital director, he told her, "Let things unfold naturally. When this case is over, come work for Choi Tae-guk's new law firm." The director also added that her mother and two brothers were arrested for fraud. Now, the only way to save them was to drop this case. Seeing her mother and two brothers in jail made her feel very distressed. At Kim Dong-gu's trial, she chose to save her family and didn't defend him anymore. This case had caused her a lot of heartache and guilt, which lingered until this day. She just wanted to forget about it. The case finally concluded, and Lawyer O was transferred to Chairman Choi's law firm. Back in the present, the female lead could only cry in sorrow, reminiscing about the past moments. Meanwhile, Choi Yoon Sang invited his brother to a bar for a drink. He was also trying to learn more about Kim Dong-gu's old case and asked Choi Ju-won. He thought his brother didn't know anything, but he revealed everything. The entire trial back then was orchestrated by their father. The male lead, missing his sister, went to the place where Na Young used to work. The hospital director appeared behind him. He told him that 10 years ago, Na Young had helped his daughter when she had an accident. The director continued, telling Gong Chan that he had been watching him for a long time. When the male lead was released from prison, it was the director who suggested he go to law school. He was delighted to see Gong Chan during the interview. On his way back, the male lead asked his mentor why he was watching him. The director, in turn, asked him if he thought No Byung-chul was the real culprit. He didn't say much more and went home to sleep, leaving the male lead slightly stunned. After discovering the male lead's identity, Lawyer Oh moved back to her old house. He called, and she was unsure whether to answer. Hesitantly, she picked up. Gong Chan asked her to meet, saying that he had found some clues about his sister's death. Before the accident, Na Young had helped someone else. When they faced each other, Su Yi said she didn't care. She called him by his real name, Kim Dong-gu, and told him to keep his distance before leaving. Hearing this, the male lead could only hold back tears. Lawyer Oh wasn't cold-hearted, so she secretly investigated the case again. It was full of mysteries, leaving Jun-hee and Lawyer Song My Rim shocked. Finally, the day came for the Hansu Company transfer to be finalized. Chairman Han Sun was overjoyed and raised a toast to everyone. Director Yoon gave everyone a gift, a picture that everyone praised. When the female lead saw it, she was surprised because it was identical to the picture at the hospital director's place. After the meeting, she asked the director about the origin of the picture, asking if it was related to the director's daughter and where she was now. Suddenly, Jun-hee called the female lead and told her about Na Young. She remembered that 10 years ago, a woman named Kang Yoon-seo had an accident and was hospitalized. She was wearing a uniform with the name Jeon Na Young on it. The girl who was brought to the emergency room at the time showed signs of sexual abuse. Su Yi finally understood why Director Yoon hated the three of them so much. She asked about the incident 10 years ago, but the director seemed unhappy and unwilling to answer, so he left. Meanwhile, Chairman Choi subtly instructed Director Ha to do something upon receiving the unpleasant news. Soon after, No Byung-chul died in prison. The news of the prisoner's demise spread widely on media outlets, shocking everyone, from the female lead to the male lead, Director Yoon, and the hospital director. However, they all had their own plans. Gong Chan immediately went to see the hospital director and inquired about Kim Dong-gu's case. Baek Jin-kai didn't hide anything and recounted the story of his daughter, also mentioning Na Young's disappearance. It turned out that she witnessed the whole incident that day, so she was likely silenced, and the killers blamed Kim Dong-gu. The male lead questioned why the director didn't speak up since he knew he was innocent. The director only apologized, saying he didn't have much influence at the time. Baek Jin-kai wanted the male and female lead to help him bring the criminals to justice, but Gong Chan was angry that all this had happened. He thought the director had missed his chance 10 years ago and then left. Baek Jin-kai remained silent, reminiscing about the time he was threatened by Chairman Choi and helplessly restrained himself, preparing for a long-term plan. The next day, during a law class, Choi Yoon-sang invited lawyer Seo Jun-myung to attend and debate about Kim Dong-gu's case from 10 years ago. They became increasingly passionate, refusing to yield to each other, and left after a while of arguing. After class, Director Ha secretly followed the male lead from behind. It seemed like he discovered that he was Kim Dong-gu. Remembering the past, Gong Chan was walking home when he was suddenly hit by a truck. The police investigated and concluded that it was an accident caused by a drunk driver. But in fact, Director Ha was the one driving the car. He thought the person had died then, but now he discovered that the male lead was Kim Dong-gu. Director Ha reported to Chairman Choi, who was enraged. He instructed him to deal with it quickly before everything came to light. That evening, Choi Yoon-sang went to see the male lead. He advised Gong Chan that Lawyer Oh had abandoned him back then, so he shouldn't expect anything from her anymore. The male lead vehemently objected and still wanted to defend Su Yi. He had been through a lot and understood that the female lead's past actions were not intentional, but a result of circumstances. He would have done the same if he were in her shoes. Gong Chan kept talking, unaware that his friend had called Lawyer Oh, and she heard everything. Hearing the heartfelt words from the male lead, Oh Su Yi started to cry. She didn't expect him to trust her unconditionally like that. Looking at the investigation board and the text next to her picture made her feel extremely remorseful. Hearing the male lead's heartfelt confession, Choi Yoon-sang pulled out his phone and told him that Su Yi had heard their entire conversation. Meanwhile, Lawyer Oh called Jun-hee over for company and to share her thoughts. She felt truly guilty for pushing the male lead into that corner all those years ago. Not knowing how to comfort her friend, Jun-hee cried with Su Yi. The male lead returned home, not feeling very cheerful. He went to drink with his two close brothers to drown his sorrows. He also mentioned that Su Yi had heard his conversation with Yoon-sang. The two brothers thought that after knowing this, Oh Soo-yi probably wouldn't dare to look at him. Gong Chan still believed in his decision to give his heart to the girl who had helped him. The next day, Lawyer Oh received information from a private investigator about Director Han following her to law school and paying attention to a person named Gong Chan. It turned out that the female lead had hired someone to track his movements, and the cameras had recorded his trip to school. She was deep in thought when she suddenly saw the male lead standing below. He called Soo-yi and told her about her hearing their conversation the previous day and about him hiding his identity, so they made peace. Lawyer Oh didn't want to chase him away, but Gong Chan yelled that he didn't care about anything and still believed in the woman he loved. Hearing this, the female lead called him in to talk. As soon as he entered the house, Gong Chan proactively suggested they catch those bastards together. This way, he could clear his name, and she wouldn't feel guilty about the case anymore. After listening, the female lead felt that the two things Gong Chan just mentioned were completely different, so she told him to go home. The male lead was dejected and about to leave when he saw a small note. He picked it up and discovered a board detailing the case from back then. Lawyer Oh felt something was wrong and ran out to see what was happening. She tried to stop him from reading, but it was too late. Knowing she couldn't hide it anymore, the female lead confessed everything she was investigating. The person who her brother had saved was the hospital director's daughter. He had also given them the names of the 3 people who had harmed Na Young. Lawyer Oh started to cry, realizing that she had harmed him back then. Seeing his beloved girlfriend sad, the male lead hugged her. On their way back, Gong Chan contacted the hospital director and asked for his help. Very soon, the day came for Director Beek's resignation. He arranged a mock trial for the male lead's team, which was similar to the case of Kim Dong-gu from years ago. At the height of the mock trial, Director Beek brought Chairman Choi to attend. Since Choi Tae-guk was the head of the largest law firm in Korea, he was invited to be the presiding judge of the mock trial. The mock trial continued, and the members of the male lead's team presented concrete evidence that closely mirrored the Kim Dong-gu case from 10 years ago to see how the chairman would handle it. Everyone thought the old fox would reveal something, but instead, he was very composed and elegantly presented a convincing argument that earned him thunderous applause from the audience. Gong Chan could only remain silent, unable to extract any further information. After the mock trial ended, he proactively approached Chairman Choi and asked if he saw any resemblance between the case today and Kim Dong-gu's case from 10 years ago. The chairman smirked and asked, "What would you do if you were actually in that position?" After hearing the male lead's firm response that he would try to find the culprit, the chairman called his action foolish and then left. Lawyer Oh gathered the people at the legal consulting center. She wanted them to help find more evidence to clear Gong Chan's name. The whole team worked diligently together. Since the male lead's identity had been exposed, Soo-yi asked everyone to spread the news that Gong Chan was Kim Dong-gu. It turned out that the female lead did this to rely on public opinion and prevent those people from harming Gong Chan. Choi Ju-won read the news and became furious. Lawyer Oh met with a reporter to provide confidential documents about those in charge. When the news broke, Chairman Han and Congressman Lee were shocked and enraged. Both of them kept calling Chairman Choi, but he didn't answer. The female lead went to the law firm to meet Choi Tae-guk. She presented evidence and recounted the events where the male lead's sister had saved the girl being chased. Since Na Young had witnessed everything, she was murdered. Oh Soo-yi asserted that she would make those villains pay, unlike the cowardly way she had acted 10 years ago. However, the old man didn't show any fear, instead revealing that Jae was the female lead's daughter. Hearing this, she was quite shocked, recalling the moments spent with the little girl. He wanted Soo-yi to give up the investigation and marry Ju-won. Finding it repulsive, Lawyer Oh left. Upon returning to the company, the female lead confronted Choi Ju-won and slapped him. Back in her office, Soo-yi took out the photo of her daughter and looked at it, telling herself it couldn't be true. Ju-won also ran back to his father to ask what was going on. His father showed him the photos that the female lead had provided and asked him about the girl from that time. Ju-won insisted that he didn't know anything. It turned out that 10 years ago, when the incident happened, Chairman Choi had told Ju-won to say that. Meanwhile, Chairman Han and Congressman Lee were in a panic over the news. That night, Choi Ju-won called his wife and told her that Jae was the female lead's daughter. His brother Yoon Sang just walked in and heard everything, which shocked him, causing the two brothers to bump into each other lightly. Over at the house, the 3 old men were discussing the news on television when their 3 sons walked in. Chairman Choi asked about the incident from 10 years ago. Chairman Han and Congressman Lee's sons both confessed, enraging the two elders. However, Choi Tae-guk used his son as an example, saying that under any circumstances, they shouldn't reveal anything. The female lead visited her mother and two brothers at the restaurant. Her mother thought something was wrong with her daughter and kept asking questions, but she didn't say anything, just drank a few sips of beer and asked for permission to leave. On her way back, she received a call from Choi Ju-won's wife about Jae being her daughter, but she wasn't sure if it was true. Choi Tae-guk got drunk and passed out in the courtyard. Seeing his father drunk and asleep, Yoon Sang snuck into the computer to do something. The next day, lawyer Oh met Ju-won's wife, and Jae also arrived. While the wife was getting Jae's hair and clothes for DNA testing, the female lead took the little girl to the beach to play. After handing over the items to Soo-yi, the wife simply said, "You're so stupid." The investigation began, and everyone took action. Some took samples from the gym, others went to get signatures, and others took water bottles from the fridge that Ju-won had touched. They gathered all the evidence and reported back to the female lead. Gong Chan went to see the owner of the restaurant from 10 years ago and heard him recount the time when prosecutors threatened him. After collecting everything and obtaining DNA test results, Soo-yi prepared a contract demanding custody of the child and inheritance rights, which she sent to Chairman Choi. She also met with him in person, demanding that he sign the document and give her 70 billion won. If not, she would release all the evidence of their crimes. After saying this, lawyer Oh left. Just then, Director Ha rushed in to show him the news about Congressman Lee and Chairman Han being involved in bribery and embezzlement. Chairman Choi was very troubled when he heard this. Director Yoon was investigating and discovered something hidden in the wall of the house. The female lead's mother asked Gong Chan to pay attention to her daughter, so he texted her, inviting her to dinner that night. After some hesitation, Soo-yi replied, agreeing. That evening, when lawyer Oh reached the entrance of her house, she suddenly stopped the car. It turned out that she had received a call from Ju-won saying that Jae had gone missing. Without hesitation, the female lead immediately drove off. The male lead saw this and also called a taxi to follow her. Choi Ju-won and his wife searched, but couldn't find her. One of them went to the security room to check the cameras. Soo-yi also arrived and went to the elementary school area to search. Fortunately, Jae was alone in a playground, picking flowers. It turned out that when she heard that her mother was going to America, she wanted to find flowers to give her mother. The female lead comforted Jae and announced that she had found her. On their way back, Jae gave Soo-yi flowers. But when Jae's current parents called to her from the other side of the street, she ran across the road without paying attention to the cars. Lawyer Oh tried to catch up, but was too late. In a moment, a bus hit her, causing everyone present to suffer extreme pain. The male lead had just arrived and didn't know what happened, so he could only help Soo-yi. Jae was rushed to the hospital, but the doctor did everything he could. The female lead, hearing this, rushed into the emergency room despite the staff trying to stop her. Chairman Choi, aware of the situation, used his connections to allow Soo-yi to stay inside. Holding her little girl in her arms, Soo-yi was filled with sorrow. There were so many things she wanted to do with her little girl. As another surgery was needed, the doctors had to take the mother and daughter out. However, Soo-yi fainted without realizing it. She had been suffering from arrhythmia, and this shock was too much for her. As soon as she woke up, she immediately wanted to get out of bed to find her daughter. Jae's funeral was held. Tae-guk was heartbroken over the loss of his beloved niece. Bigwigs like Congressman Lee also came to pay their respects. However, as soon as they sat down, they started talking about business. Tae-guk angrily threw a glass of water in their faces and yelled at them, reminding them it was a sad day for him and they shouldn't be talking about such things. Oh Soo-yi came to pay her respects to her daughter, but Ju-won uttered harsh words to her. He blamed her for harming Jae. Overwhelmed with grief, she didn't bother to argue or even look at him. Standing before her child, Soo-yi couldn't say it, but deep down, she sincerely wanted to apologize to Jae. She was heartbroken for not realizing her little Han-ul sooner. Looking at her daughter's portrait, she wept in agony. As she stepped outside, she met Tae-guk. He spoke to her in a low voice about the confidentiality agreement they had. He was still holding up his end of the agreement. He hoped she would too. Just as she was leaving, she met Gong Chan. He took her home. Seeing her like that, he knew he shouldn't say anything. But the next morning, Soo-yi left a letter and departed. Chan had just returned, but she was gone. He immediately went out to look for her. When he asked Su-yi's friends, they didn't know where she had gone. At TK Law, My-Rim was helping Su-yi investigate the case from 10 years ago. T-Kook discovered this and showed her videos of her secretly investigating Director Ha. However, My-Rim was fearless despite his threats. No wonder everyone considered her a little Oh Su-yi. T-Kook said he would show her how he would hold a disciplinary hearing to dismiss Su-yi. He would cripple her and throw her away like useless trash. My-Rim's eyes were red, but she kept her composure. She confidently took the paper and the pen from Chairman Choi's desk in front of him to check for fingerprints. As expected, My-Rim was dismissed from TK Law. Before leaving, she reminded Chan's team to be careful because their investigation into fingerprints had been discovered. Gong Chan searched for Su-yi everywhere. He went to the harbor and asked people if they had seen her, but no one knew. He immediately went to another place to search. Chan's team searched for a while and finally found Yeon Na-young's patient clothes. Su-yi was heartbroken at the beach. She wanted to end her life. She walked straight into the vast ocean. Luckily, Gong Chan appeared in time to save her. He was shocked and asked her what she was doing. Su-yi cried out, saying that she had caused so much pain to him and everyone else. Gong Chan urged her to expose everything. She could do it. She was strong and resilient, not easily defeated. But Su-yi was afraid that she might make another mistake, causing him more pain. Gong Chan said it was okay. He could endure it for her. Meanwhile, T-Kook was trying every possible means to get rid of Oh Su-yi. Even the hospital director was involved. He wanted to revoke her lawyer's license at any cost. If not, they would dig up all her past cases at TK Law. Su-yi finally returned to everyone. This time, she was determined. Win or lose, they would rise up again. The disciplinary hearing against Su-yi took place. On the other side, hospital director Baek Jin-kai was also being investigated for bribery and his daughter's case. At the disciplinary hearing, Oh Su-yi was cornered by all the evidence against her. But her face remained cold and unyielding. Meanwhile, Chairman Choi, acting as a witness, confirmed Jin-kai's bribery. The director was confused about why he was doing this. He clenched his fist angrily. The director couldn't take it anymore. He stood up and said that his daughter, Eunicio, had been harmed by the 3 sons of those influential people. The evidence was being brought in, but CPU couldn't deliver it. Everything was hopeless. Back at the disciplinary hearing, the evidence presented was against Su-yi, forcing them to request a temporary suspension until the next day. On the second day of the trial, Su-yi had evidence to counter the accusations about the case of the abused boy. Regarding So-young's case, she would tell everyone about the true nature of the incident. Images of So-young and Chairman Choi being intimate appeared on the screen. She confirmed that So-young's killer was not Suk Pao, but the chairman of the TK group, Choi T-Kook. This information created a stir among everyone present. Su-yi went on to present an audio recording of Congressman On's scandal, which also implicated Chairman Choi. However, the disciplinary board still refuted all the evidence she presented, proving they were indeed loyal dogs to T-Kook. Finally, Su-yi had to show them the video of Choi T-Kook harming So-young. It was him who pushed her down. So-young had been pregnant with his child at the time and had used it to threaten him for money, which led him to harm her. At this moment, Director Ha entered to testify. It seemed that after his son's death, he had no more regrets. He was willing to provide all the evidence he had to Su-yi. Seeing Director Ha, T-Kook rushed to his room to check on the situation, but there was only a letter left behind. When he returned to his office, Yoon Sang was waiting. He told his father that he had taken the evidence from the secret room and given it to Su-yi. The old man was furious and chased him out. Ha Il-koo recounted all of T-Kook's wrongdoings, including the case from 10 years ago when he killed Gong Chan's sister, framing him as the criminal. Director Ha knew it was too late, but he sincerely apologized to Gong Chan. On CPU's side, he presented evidence of Chairman Choi harming Yeon Na-young, his wife. The evidence was her earrings found at his house and the blood-stained uniform she wore. Everything seemed to be coming to an end. Professor Kim's wife was a member of the disciplinary board. She admitted that the board had had many issues and needed to be reconsidered. Finally, the case was closed. She sincerely apologized to Su-yi. The victory was hers. After the hearing, Gong Chan stepped out and met his adoptive mother. The two embraced happily. The story of Chairman Choi continued. More and more evidence was brought forward by Hanso Bio. It seemed that he couldn't escape this path anymore. At the company, everyone looked at him with contempt, even packing up their belongings. Juwon was still in despair. On the other hand, after this incident, Su-yi could finally enjoy a drink with Gong-chan. While they raised their glasses in celebration, Taekook was in a state of darkness and despair. He decided to end his life by taking pills. His last call was to Su-yi. It seemed that she was the only one who would answer his calls. Taekook wondered if things would have turned out differently if he had accepted her as his daughter-in-law. He acknowledged that his actions were crimes and that he had to face shame and disgrace for what he had done. He also insisted that it was just the act of a weakling. Su-yi sensed something was wrong and called for emergency services, but it seemed too late. When they arrived, Chairman Choi had passed away from an overdose. After Chairman Choi's death, the other cunning people used various tactics to restore their reputation. Regarding Baek Jin Kai's case, Su-yi tried to help the director. However, for all the mistakes he had made, Jin Kai pleaded for the harshest punishment. Time flew by. 6 months later, Su-yi was still a professor at the law school. She met and talked with CPU. She happily told him that she was completely satisfied with her life, just like at the beginning of the semester. She arrived late to class again, just like before. Su-yi addressed her students, telling them that as lawyers, they shouldn't use their knowledge of the law for evil. In front of them, they weren't successful lawyers, but just ordinary people. She had endured a lot of suffering to get to where she was today. As promised earlier, she awarded the 20 million won scholarship to the top student. It was Gangjia. The new semester began. Mai Rim became a new member of the legal consulting office. She would help everyone. This time, there was no scholarship because Su-yi was broke. As she returned home, it started to rain again. Su-yi was about to walk in the rain when a familiar scene unfolded. Gong-chan came with an umbrella to protect her from the rain. "I would have brought a prettier umbrella," she said. This line was also familiar, but this time, they walked in the rain together, more in love than ever. This scene mirrored the beginning of their relationship. Perhaps everything would begin anew, but this time with genuine love and boundless happiness.